No, that's the first time I've been asked that question.
You were exposed to a life of privilege. How did this shape the way you are today?
There's no denying we were very comfortable. My parents would never let us forget. This is from the people.
President Duterte said you were a spoiled brat and a weak leader.
Well,
What makes you think and believe that you will be the champion for unification?
I'm not the champion for unification. I'm just saying that unification and the unity is a necessary condition.
Just days before the Filipino votes in a hotly contested presidential elections, we speak to candidate Bongbong Marcos in private. Thank you very much for granting us this interview, Senator Bongbong Marcos.
Thank you for having me. Maraming salamat.
Now, counting the days to the election, sir.
Yes.
Kamusta na po kayo ngayon?
Well, malaking nawala yung pagod namin after the Easter weekend. So now we're back doing rallies and going out, and although syempre papunta na tayo doon sa organization, the people on the ground to make sure everybody knows what to do. Vote protection essentially. But again, to solidify. Kasi essentially the surveys are very encouraging. Pero numero pa lang yan eh. Kailangan pang gawing boto yan, tapos kailangan bantayan yung boto na yan. So that's really what we are doing now. Although we won't stop. People tell me to take a day off, I cannot. Dahil ang training ko ganyan eh. Basta't election, kailangan pursigido talaga. So that's what, until the very last day that we can campaign, we will campaign.
You know, sir, much of who you are today has been largely shaped by your past. You were 8 years old when you and your family moved into Malacanang. Can you tell us, what did you like about living in the presidential palace, and were there any downsides?
7 years old. I spent my 8th birthday in the palace already. I remember my father was newly elected president kasi my birthday is in September. At that time, pumapasok ang presidente in Enero. So, he took me to school. That was the last time that ever happened, I suppose. So, yes, 7th, it was my 7th birthday. But my 8th birthday was the first birthday I spent in the palace. What was it like? In the beginning, it was really parang it was a much simpler, parang bahay pa rin, and it was a very, things weren't so hectic. The palace is divided into the private areas and the office areas, yung tawag namin study room, and the offices of my father, etc. You're the presidential palace, and you always have to be, how do you say, at the very least presentable. Because the minute you leave your room, you do not know who's going to be there. I mean, there have been many times that I came out of my room, ang kasalubong ko, presidente, na nagsi-state visit, na kasama ng father ko. So mahirap naman, nakapajama akong lalabas. You know? So
Bata pa kasi kayo eh, no?
Yeah, we were still small, but you get used to it. I mean, you get used to the idea that the only real area are the private areas. The rest of the palace is an office. It was nice. What did I like about it? You're a little spoiled when you're in the palace, because anything, especially as a kid, you're very well attended to, you're very well cared for. But it's a very unusual, when pagbata ka, akala mo yung buhay mo, kahit na medyo naiba, akala mo normal yun, lahat ng tao, ganun. But we soon learned very quickly, because we had friends na, we go to their homes, and we go, then nagbabiyahe na kami. Nakikita namin, hindi, ibang klase pala itong tinitirahan namin. Nakatira kami sa palasyo.
Siguro na pag-usapan na lang natin, sir, kung sakali po ba manalo kayo, will that be your official residence, or like si President Duterte kasi ngayon, iba po, di ba? Yung tinitirahan niya sa bahay pangarap eh.
Well, the palace is still the official residence. To tell you the truth, we haven't actually thought about it because ang planning, I always tell them, the planning horizon is until May 9. I guess we'll just have to attend to it when but I won't live outside of the palace.
Yes.
Dahil nandun yung opisina eh. So you don't have to, you cannot be too far away.
Okay.
And all the facilities, the communications, nandun lahat eh. So it's your office and you cannot really be very far away.
You appeared in a movie as yourself in your father's biopic, Iginuhit ng Tadhana. You were a child giving a speech about your dream of becoming a politician. Ilang taon po kayo nun? Tsaka nung time na yun, naisip nyo na po ba na magpolitiko talaga?
Well, hindi nawawala sa pag-isip. No one would let me forget that I was my father's son. Maliit pa nga ako, sasabihin, one day magpresidente kayo. Mga pabiro.
Pero you also mentioned in some interviews you wanted to be a rock star and an astronaut.
That's right.
Paano kayo napunta talaga? Pero napunta kayo sa politika. Was there ever, parang may track ba kayo papunta na lang doon?
Hindi ko ma-explain. Umiiwas ako sa politika, talaga. Talagang tinutulak ako. Teenager pa ako, marami na nagsabi, ito yung gagawin mo. Sabi, ayoko, tapos na yan kasi nagawa na ng father ko yan. Saka nakita ko yung buhay ng father ko at saka mother ko. Ang hirap naman ng buhay nito. Ang daming sakripisyo, at saka ang bigat ng trabaho. So sabi ko, hindi ko na lang gagawin yan. And in my studies, I tended towards mathematics and science. So, yun yung astronaut part na yun. At the time, we were I was watching the preparations for the moon landing. Moon landing was in 1969. So, yun ang talagang tinitignan ko. In fact, when my father had a state visit to the United States in 1968, Senator Inouye, who was a good friend of my father, sinalubong kami sa Hawaii. And Senator Inouye asked me, what do you want to do while you're in the States? My first answer immediately is, I want to visit NASA. So, linipad ako sa Cape Canaveral in Florida. And they took me around and I was like, nakakanga. So that was my interest, my dream. And then when I was studying already yung high school level na, sabi nung isang my housemaster, yung pare na nagtuturo sa amin, sabi, you're always magulo, ang gulo-gulo mo, siguro wala kang you have too much time in your hands, study an instrument. So I did, and I've got very, very, very interested in music, only because also in our house, because my mother is very musical, laging may music, so it was something that was very close to. And then, I was exactly at that age. When I first went to England, I was 12 years old. But we're talking 1969. So, rock and roll, right? Yun ang, nasa London pa, nasa England pa. Not in London, but in England. So, talaga, yung mga nababasa ko, napupuntahan ko, napapanood ko, yung mga sikat na naging kaibigan ko. So I got very, very interested in music.
Pero yun nga, sir, you ended in politics and you would always say na malaking influence ng dad nyo and your mom. Pero meron po ba kayong differences with your father or can you remember a time na you had a disagreement?
No. He's the boss. You don't disagree. If he tells you to, because he's always right anyway. As far as our situation, hindi naman nagkakamali yun. Hindi naman magbibigay ng bad advice yun. At saka kung may inutos sa'yo, kailangan mo talagang gawin because hindi naman niya gagawin, hindi niya ka namang utusan kung hindi importante.
We will talk more about your family and also politics because the Marcos family is back in national politics, and how did they do it? We will talk about that and more when we return. This is In Private on CNN Philippines. watching In Private with presidential candidate, former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Sir, as the only son and namesake of the late former President Marcos, you were exposed to a life of privilege. How did this shape the way you are today?
Well, inevitably, you get used. I mean, of course, there's no denying we were very comfortable, and we were very privileged as the president's children. But my parents would never let us forget that this is not yours. This is from the people. Everything we have, all the advantages that we have gained, any successes that we have achieved, and any comfort or privilege that we enjoy comes from the people. And that's why you have to serve. And so that was well balanced. It was very clear to us that we were very, very lucky. Hindi ito, hindi, dapat talaga ganitong buhay. Hindi, sinasabi sa amin yun.
Pero sinabi niyo dapat balansehin, di ba? Laging binibilan ng parents niyo yung balansehin pa rin yung buhay. I'm sure narinig niyo po that there was one speech where President Duterte said you were a spoiled brat and a weak leader. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I think it was playing politics. I think one of the things we have learned about PRRD is that he likes to keep everyone on their toes. Ayaw niyang yung masyado kong mag-relag, talagang he's always making sure everybody's thinking hard about what they're doing. So I think that was one of those instances.
And so, from a privileged life, your family was forced out of Malacanang during the 1986 People Power Revolt. But how did you explain those events to your children naman po as they were growing up?
Well, my children, when they started, it really happens when they start to read. They can read the newspaper already. And my children were born in essentially the 90s. So, andyan pa rin, meron pa rin mga anti-Marcos na galit sa father ko, galit sa amin, etc. And I gave them the same explanation that it wasn't my parents but my aunts and uncles. I remember when my father was Senate President, every day ang dyaryo, oust Marcos, oust Marcos, oust Marcos. I don't know, hindi ko na naintindihan, but it was a big issue. Kasi patakbo na siya ng presidente noon. So, oust na. Sabi ko, so I asked one of my uncles, and I said, why, ba't ganyan? Ano bang ginawa ng father ko, ba't galit sila? Sabi niya, hindi, ganyan talagang politika. Because gusto nga silang nakaupo dyan eh. Kaya gusto nilang tanggalin yung tatay mo para sila na ang umupo. Ganyan lang talagang politika. Sabi niya, walang nanalo ng election by 100%. Laging may babatikos yan. Yan ang buhay ng politiko. So, I mean, it's something that we understood immediately. And that's the explanation that I gave my children.
And how about to a lot of our voters now are more than 50% youth talaga, yung mga millennials, Gen Z. How about the issue of martial law? How would you explain it to them?
Well, I think the best people who can explain it to them are the relatives who went through it. And we have explained it. We've been explaining it for 40 years already. And, you know, I explained it by saying that the situation at the time was dire. We were fighting a war on two fronts. We had the secessionist movement in the south. We have the dissident NPAs, CPP NPA in the countryside. And there was something, and these were people who wanted to bring down the government, and the government had to defend itself. So that was my understanding. That's always been my understanding of it, and I think it was so, because if you look at the historical record, totoo naman, ganyan naman talaga ang nangyari. So that's why I think that that's how I explained that was what your lolo had to do. He felt he had to do that.
But once in a while, and you have also mentioned this, na nabibiktima din po kayo ng fake news, sinasabi nyo.
Yeah, but
so,
Everybody,
is so?
it's a social media. It's a social media. Everybody's a victim of fake news.
So kayo po, tingin nyo, may mga ganun na rin, parang fake news targeted against you?
Oh yeah. Oh, I can give you a whole list of hundreds of instances with that.
But Senator, kasi I just have to ask you that misinformation is also being attributed kasi naman to your supporters, to your online supporters. Even Facebook and Twitter, they took down hundreds of pages of spamming behavior kasi daw parang hindi siya organic. Or how do you say about allegations that your supporters have a machinery of disinformation, and when you say that organic, it's not
Find me
true?
one. Show me one. One, just one.
May mga tinanggal po ang Twitter and Facebook.
But those are their individual accounts. And besides, I don't know, Twitter. Some of these things are, these are from the United States. They don't know what's going on here, so maybe they might be mistaken in some instances. But again, these are individuals. Yung sinasabi ng trolls, thousands, so hanapan mo ako ng isa. Just one. Find me a troll.
What you're
that's
saying
working
is
for us.
they can't prove it and
They
directly
don't
link it
exist.
to you.
That's why you show me the place where there are hundreds of trolls sitting in front of a computer spreading fake news. It doesn't exist. But,
If ever
I'm
po,
malakas ang loob ko kasi alam kong hindi nangyayari yun eh.
na walang trolls that can be directly linked to your campaign or to you.
There are no trolls. We have no trolls.
Okay.
None. Not a single one. I have been offered a click army. I've been offered a troll. Hindi ko ginagamit yan. Because it's very simple. You know what the evolution of that is? Is because when I started doing the vlogs, which is about, we're now up to our 210th, something like that. When we started doing the vlogs, ibuboost ba natin? Mag-a-add ba tayo? Sabi ko, wag na kasi hindi natin malalaman kung ano talaga yung numero. So up to now, we don't boost. We don't do ads. You saw the Facebook, zero ako.
Yung ads, yung
I have
amount
not-
spent,
I
no?
don't, because we got used to working that way. And alam mo, ang mga bata, the most heavy users of social media are younger people. My son showed me 2 clicks. It's a troll. 2 clicks, that's boosted. Wala na, it's not effective anymore. Kitang-kita mo naman yung mga comment, diba, pare-pareho. Iba-iba, kunwari, pare-pareho yung address, iba-iba yung sinasabi. O, pare-pareho yung, iba-iba yung address, pero pare-pareho yung sinasabi. Halatang-halata naman eh. So, it's
So moving
not,
forward, sir,
useful.
would you support, kasi may bills po pending bills, diniscuss na rin siya on committee level, that will penalize propagators of fake news or disinformation. Kung gagawin siyang batas, sir,
How do you do it?
as a policy.
How do you do it? One of the greatest advantages of the internet in general, not just social media, is that it's interactive and it's open source, if that's what you want to call it. So anybody can participate. And how do you control that? And why would you want to? So it is so far self-regulating because it's really very hard for a government to control it. Siguro Zuckerberg can control it, but
Yung
I don't know if we
administrators lang.
can. I don't know if even if you there's an action that legislation is always behind technology. Because it takes time for the legislators to understand what the technology really means, how it works. By which time, it has moved on already. Kaya laging behind yung batas. So, I don't know how you will do that. I think the only defense for everybody is to interact and to read everything. Don't read one thing. Yung tinatawag na echo chamber. Kayo-kayo lang. Ang galing-galing mo. Hindi, galing talaga. Hindi, ang galing. Nagbubulahan lang kayo. So it's you have to be more. You have to show a little discretion in what you believe in.
Sir, next, let's talk about your message of unity. His aspirations for national unity and a glimpse of his presidency. More of that with presidential candidate, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, when we return. We're still with presidential candidate, former Senator Bongbong Marcos in private, right here on CNN Philippines. Senator, so if you want to be a father to the nation, people would be interested to know how you lead your own household. Paano po ba ang buhay sa loob ng bahay ng pamilya Marcos?
I don't know. That's the first time I've been asked that question. I don't know how to answer that. Of course, I think we all think it's normal. And I'm sure it's different from everybody else, at least a little bit. But we live the generally very perfectly normal life. Mga anak ko kasi, Sanders 27, 26, 25. So dikit-dikit sila. So they're just most of the time, most of their past few years has been them studying. So kami lang dalawa nung kami mag-asawa because they studied abroad. So it's wala, simple lang naman ang buhay namin. It's really, with my wife especially, it's all work. She's a lawyer, and as most lawyers do, they work very hard. So does she. And ako naman, of course, when I was in office, as governor, as congressman, a senator, maraming trabaho. So that's really what all you ended up doing.
Disciplinarian po ba kayo? Pinapayagan niyo po ba sila ng late night? Yung puro lalaki ano po? Paano po kayo lumalabas?
Yun ang swerte namin, lalaki. So lumaki silang nag-iisa. So nasanay silang nag-iisa. So nung una, may curfew pa eh. Hindi talaga nasusunod. So patras yung curfew. Hanggang finally, sinabi, basta umuwi lang kayo. At saka kung nagsara na, gusto niyo pang magkwentuhan, doon kayo sa bahay para at least alam namin nandun kayo, safe kayo. So, we're not strict that way. We're strict about studies. Ang usapan ko sa mga anak ko, basta you get straight A's, you can do anything you want.
Let's talk about your mom.
Yes.
So, former First Lady Imelda Marcos, did she have a say in your decision to run for president this time? Kasi dati, when you were just vice president, she had a lot to say.
Yeah.
Ano po yung naging influence niya? And for her, what does this battle personally mean?
Put it this way. Even my father, I don't think would object if I say she's the supreme politician in the family. My father is the statesman. He's the political genius. He's the all that. Yung mother ko, talagang politika yung makita mo eh. My mother can connect with anyone. From her classmate from I don't know how many years ago to the person working in the palengke to Gaddafi to the Queen of England. Lahat na nagiging kaibigan niya. Anything that happens in politics, we always ask her, what do you think? Is this a good idea? Should we do it like this, or should we wait? Or laging, and I can say that I learn something new every time I talk to my mother, especially yung seryosong usapan na politika. I always learn something new, and so yes, she has always a very big influence on everything. As to deciding to run for the presidency, well, it was. Of course, she was part of the pero it wasn't, hindi ko miniting na anong gagawin natin. It's just, every so often, ma'am, ano kaya? Ano sa palagay mo? Anong tingin mo? Anong basa mo sa sitwasyon? Ang galing niyan eh. Alam niya at saka she knows the person and she's seen it all before. So, yes, she's now, a little frustrated because pinagbabawalan naming sumama sa rally. Eh gustong sumama, lalo na pagka yung mga Tacloban, yung mga sa Leyte, yun sabi niya, kailangan, I can help you with your campaign, kanya. Sabi ko, yes ma'am, but you know, it's COVID pa delikado pa So yun, medyo frustrated siya ng konti when my sisters come and watch a rally or watch may event. Sasabihin nila, si mami tawag ng tawag. Kasi daw yung shirt mo hindi nakabuton o yung mikropono mo hindi ka marinig. Basta marami siyang comment. Talagang siya, very conscious siya sa ganyan. So, yes, she's very, very, very involved in everything that we're doing. But the decision was mine. I really have to say that the decision was mine. Of course, I consulted everyone whose opinions I value.
Talking about the women in your life, Senator, ano po ba ang magiging role ng wife nyo if and when you become president, and also your sister, si Senator Amy?
Well, Amy will be senator for another 3 years. So I'm sure she will continue doing her advocacies and yung mga interests niya and yung mga simulaan niya. I was just discussing this with my wife before coming here. And she teaches kasi. So she considers herself not only a lawyer, but she considers herself a teacher. And she says that she would like to be able to help, even especially, ayaw niya nasa public capacity. She wants to be independent in a sense now. She's working privately to help the educational system somehow. As an example that I've said, when I was governor, that's when she started teaching because she said it would be improper for me to practice in the province kasi alam mo na, influence peddling na lang ang mangyayari dyan. So nagturo na lang siya. And basta there were instances na nagpatulong ako sa kanya, lalo na nung pinuntahan ko yung jail namin. Sabi ko, kalahati dyan, dapat hindi nakakulong wala lang abogado yan Kaya nandiyan pa yan. So then, dinala niya yung mga estudyante niya, they gave free legal advice, all of these things. Marami silang natulungan. So I'm sure it will be something in that vein.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have said a few times before na when you were asked what's the worst mistake or worst quality of your father, na sabi mo, he trusted the wrong people. Pero Senator Amy saying, ngayon pa lang daw, marami nang nag-o-audition to be a part of your cabinet. So parang, paano po ba kayo magtitiwala and what will be your basis in choosing the members of your cabinet?
Well, number one is competence. There's no use hiring somebody who's incompetent. Yung willingness to work willing to sacrifice. Because, look, the key to the next administration is going to be the economy. The failure and success of the next will be how we handle the economic situation. Hindi pa naman tayo post-COVID, But as we try to recover, we try to manage COVID, and how do we? And the new world, COVID changed everything. So the managers, the economic managers, are going to be key. The best economic managers are in private life. Mayayaman na yan. Ang laki ng kinikita ng mga yan. To have asked them to come into government and to put all their assets in a trust or however the system they're going to use is, and to give up that very how do you say,
lucrative,
successful and life is not an easy thing.
May naisip na po ba kayo ngayon ng mga pangalan?
Another thing, another thing I don't allow myself. But you're right, ang daming nag-audition. Siyempre, I take note of everybody. May mga recommendation yung iba. Si ganito, magaling yan. Si ganito, magaling yan. So you just have to trust your instincts also. And generally speaking, you have to, in my case, I think it's necessary that you have some working experience with that person. Meron na kayong ginawa. Nakita mo na talaga kung paano trumabaho yan. Masipag ba talaga yan? Marunong ba talaga yan? Number one. Number two, yung handang magsakripisyo sa gobyerno. Dahil sakripisyo naman talaga yan. You have to, isipin mo, ang ganda-ganda ng buhay na they go to the office, they make $1 million one day, they go home, tapos simple lang, they have a drink, they have dinner, di ba? They go out, watch a movie. Simple lang ang buhay ng mga private businessmen. Ngayon, pasok sila sa araw-araw, binabatikos, araw-araw, kung ano pinagsasabi. Sakripisyo talaga.
Gusto ko lang din balikan ulit itong campaign because we're at the end game of the campaign. And at this point, President Duterte has not yet officially endorsed you, considering you're running with his daughter. How do you feel about that?
I understand. He's the president, and it's a good position for the president to stay above the fray. And I think that, I mean, of course, we would love to have him come and campaign for us. And siyempre, yun ang pinaka-advantageous. At kahit papano, what was the last survey satisfaction rating ni PRRD is, 80%, which means people trust him. Pag sinabi ni Pangulo, sabi niya, ito yung dapat nating iboto, maraming makikinig sa kanya. Kasi may tiwala sila sa kanya, 80% nga ang tiwala sa kanya. So malaking tulong sana yun. But I can see why, as president, he preferred to be above it all. And just make sure that, which is what he's doing now, is to make sure that the conduct of elections is accountable, is clean, is transparent, etc., etc.
Your opponents, some of them, have warned of destabilization if you become president. Do you think there's basis for that? And how will you deal with possible destabilization attempts should you win?
Put it this way. Should I win, will my supporters destabilize? So if there's going to be destabilization, it will come from them. Not from us. But nanalo na eh. Ba't namin sisirain, di ba? So that's a funny assertion to make by them. Ang manggugulo yan, yung kalaban namin. So sa kanila manggagaling kung sakali.
Do you see that happening? And
I don't think so. I really don't think so. It's syempre, alam mo, at this stage of the election, at this stage of the campaign, ang dami ng chismis. Si ganito, may gumagalaw yung mga sundalo dito. O yung ganitong grupo, ganito, may ginagawa. So, it becomes yung chismis talagang umiinit. Kasama na rin dyan yung pampagulo na, yan, fake news. Maglalabas ng mga fake news.
The central message of your campaign is unity, but sir, the Marcos name is still very polarizing until now. No? What makes you think and believe that you will be the champion for unification?
I'm not the champion for unification. I'm just saying that unification and the unity is a necessary condition for us to be able to achieve all that we want to achieve. The champion for unity are Filipinos, because Filipinos have it in their heart already to love each other, to love our country. Now, it's just you have to bring to that a leadership na sasabihin, okay, kung talagang gusto nyong tumulong, ito yung gagawin natin. This is your part. You can help us this way. You can help us that way. And we will support you in this way. Pero sabay-sabay tayo, ito yung gagawin natin. Nagkakasundo ba tayo? Magkasundo tayo, ito yung gagawin natin. Yun ang ibig sabihin sa pag pinag-uusapan yung pagkakaisa. Sometimes it's mistaken when I talk about unity, pag pinag-uusapan yung pagkakaisa. Ang interpretation ng iba ay yung sa politika. Kailangan lahat magkasama sa isang partido. Hindi yun ang ibig ko sabihin. Ang ibig ko sabihin, magkaisa tayo, natutulungan natin ang Pilipinas. Tutulungan natin yung ating mga kapwa Pilipino.
Sir, we'll talk about more as to how your message of unity can translate into programs or platforms. We'll still have former Senator Bongbong Marcos with us in private here on CNN Philippines. You're watching In Private on CNN Philippines, still with presidential candidate former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Sir, when you become president, what will be your first concrete step towards achieving unity? Siguro narinig nyo na sinasabi ng mga tao, kaya ba ng unity pababaan ng presyo ng gasolina? Kaya ba ng unity magdala ng trabaho? Ano po yung tugon nyo dun sa mga ganon?
It's prices and jobs. Jobs. Prices. When you do a survey about COVID to Filipinos, ang mga concern, number 1, walang trabaho. Number 2, walang pera, walang pakain. Ang pinakamahirap talaga yung nag-lockdown tayo ng husto. I mean, hindi lang naman tayo. Everybody around the world had to do it. No? But yun ang pinakamahirap. Kaya siguro wala nang lockdown. Kasi nung panahon ng mga lockdown, we had hindi pa natin alam eh. Hindi pa natin alam kung ano ba talaga yung COVID. Tapos wala tayong vaccines, hindi pa tayo ready. We didn't know how to treat it. We weren't really that good yet. So we just, option lang, lockdown. Siguro, tama na yung huwag na tayong magla-lockdown dahil may vaccine naman. Marami na tayong natutunan, medically speaking. It's all about how to create jobs. And you look at the areas, what's the fastest? First of all, the MSMEs, number 1. Ang daming nalugi, ang daming lubog sa utang. So I think the government, together with the private sector, can do something about that. And the government, in terms of fiscal policy, taxes, na siguro bigyan ng tax holiday, tax amnesty, yung mga hindi nakapagbayad ng lockdown, things like that, para bigyan naman sila ng breathing room, no? Makabuelo naman sila. And then on the private sector, yung magbigay ng financing. The other area na mabilis ang return is agriculture. Because we really have to do something about our agriculture anyway. Sobrang ating importation, yung production kasi natin kulang eh. So kailangan natin tugunan yon. We have to go back to doing research. We have to support the farmers. The whole value chain from research and development to production of seedlings, to livestock dispersal, to giving away bangka na mas malaki. The other isang experience ko nung nag-governor ako was tourism. Ang bilis ng tourism, ng returns ng tourism. But we have to do it in another way. Siguro because yung airport natin dito sa Manila is limited in its capacity. I think the real capacity is 6.57 million passengers a year. That's not enough. We need to have more. We keep talking about 10 million, pero hindi natin aabutin yan. So, magtayo tayo ng magagandang airport para hindi na kailangan dumaan sa Maynila. Another one that it's actually something I suggested in a long time is like the New Deal of FDR during the crash of the stock market in 1929, called the New Deal, where talagang gumawa sila ng infrastructure program. Trabaho yan eh. Siguradong trabaho yan eh. And you need the infrastructure anyway. You really need infrastructure. The only siguro yung papalitan natin is that we have to have in all of this, you have to have a plan. Hindi mo pwedeng sasabihin, sige, dyan gawin natin yan. Yan gawin, ano lang. Kailangan may plano tayo. Dahil limited ang resources natin eh. Ang utang natin, 13 trillion na. Kaya kailangan natin bawiin yun, paano natin gagawin. So, we have to be very careful with what little funds we have.
Yung new taxes, because you mentioned about the national debt, are you all for new taxes, imposing new taxes?
Depends on what sector, in what area. But if the brunt of it is going to be felt by the consumer, I would not be very partial to that. For the simple reason, hirap na ang mga tao. Huwag mo nang dagdagan ng bigat ng hirap ng tao. Everywhere you look, then our educational system, we have to really fix it very, very well. We have to support the teachers more. And when I talk about support, it's not just the sweldo, it's not just the benefits, it's also the training. Because the technologies, the new thinking is moving so quickly. You have to be able. The teachers should have the benefit of that of knowing all of that para maituro nila sa bata. Para yung kabataan natin pag graduate talagang magandang and then scholarship programs, dagdagan natin ang scholarship programs. The agency should have scholarship programs, like the DA will have scholarship programs for agronomists and agriculturists and hydrologists and yung mga kailangan nilang expert. Yung ganun, they need engineers maybe for the energy side. We need for the DOJ, we need the good lawyers. We have to improve the bureaucracy. We have to improve the quality of public service.
So what's going to be your program in terms of fighting graft and corruption? How will you promote a culture of accountability in government, and how will you lead by example in this area?
Well, leading by example is very simple. You do not tolerate any kind of this kind of na ginagawa na kinukuha yung pera ng gobyerno. At the lower level in the bureaucracies, if we improve the efficiency, ang ideal dyan, lalo na sa lower levels, walang fixer. At the higher level, it goes back to the people you choose. Meron talaga dyan na walang iniisip pagka na-appoint, iniisip paano tayo kikita rito. Huwag tayong kukuha ng mga ganun. At kung meron mang nakalusot na may ginawa, parusahan mo.
Sir, may mga international think tank like you have Bloomberg, Capital Economics of the UK, Pantheon Macroeconomics, hindi sila kumbinsido na makakabuti para sa ekonomiya ng bansa ang kung kayo po ang magiging Pangulo. What will you tell them specifically to change their minds?
I will not tell them, there's no need, I will do things. They're not convinced, we will convince them.
Tingin nyo ba if they're talking about, it won't be bad for the economy, may obstacles kaya if ever they're gonna put in more investments?
I think those are more political statements than actual economic analysis, if you ask me. Because, I don't know, I suppose there's they feel that maybe magkakagulo, etc., that it won't be stabilized. And they may have a point. But we know that. So kung sakali man ay panalo ko itong eleksyon, babantayan namin yung mga ganun. Hindi naman tayo lang natutulog.
The Presidential Commission on Good Government was created to go after the ill-gotten wealth of the Marcos family and their associates. Should you win as president, what role will the PCGG play?
Strengthen it. Kasi pinag-uusapan mo yung corruption, graft and corruption. Yan ang trabaho nila. Patibayin mo, give them a bigger budget, give them more staff para habul-habuli talaga nila lahat. Then mag-file sila ng kaso sa ombudsman.
Pero may kukunin pa po silang more than 170 in litigation pa. Meron pang more than 100 billion pesos in litigation. What can be done with that?
I don't know. I am not familiar with the cases. I'm not familiar with the cases, and that's literally case to case. No, those are.
Pero yung sinasabi yung strengthen, so how can you expand the functions? How can you strengthen it?
So that instead of directing themselves against the Marcoses only, I mean, if I have, kung meron akong corrupt na kamag-anak, lalabas yung pangalan niya. But not only us, lahat. Lahat. Kasi malayo nasa ibang panahon na tayo eh. Hindi na yun ang issue. Ang issue is just graft and corruption in government. And they're already there. Di gamitin mo na. Patibayin mo pa. Para talagang meron kang agency na walang ginawa. Kung hindi, nagbabantay na walang gumagawa ng kalokohan.
Sir, itong issue ng ill-gotten wealth, and then you have the compensation law na natapos ng bayaran more than 11,000 martial law victims. I know you've been asked about the apology and you already said that you cannot apologize for something that you didn't do. Pero yung violations, the mistakes, kayo po mismo, what are your thoughts about these ill-gotten wealth amassed and human rights violations committed
let the
under
courts
the
do their
Marcos?
work. Let the courts do their work. Kami naman, lagi namin sinasabi, if a court orders us to do something, we will do it. So, let the courts do the work.
But in terms of your policy, if ever you win, to against the culture of impunity, what will be your policy?
What culture of impunity I do?
In terms maybe of yung hindi po napaparusahan, yung mga in terms of human rights violations.
Again, let the courts do their work. You know, that's the whole thing, is that we have to strengthen our institutions. Nagiging politicized ang institutions natin because, I don't know, because that's the system that we have in place. We have to strengthen our institutions so that it doesn't matter who is in power.
Isigit ko na, sir, itong question ko for the media. Medyo selfish dahil media po ako. So, paano po kaya ang magiging coverage sa inyo? Kasi ngayon medyo yung iba nahihirapan daw i-approach kayo even for ambush interviews, or if ever maging presidente po kayo, paano po ang magiging pakikitungo nyo kaya sa media?
Put it this way, ako, palagay ko hindi ako maglalagay ng spokesman. Haharap ako sa media. I don't understand but
That would be good for us to cover you directly.
May spokesman ng presidente. Kaya naman i-explain ng presidente kahit na ano eh. So, yun, ganun na lang. You have, the old system was they have a press officer who conducts for regular press secretary, who conducts regular briefings. Especially kung may malaking issue na pumutok, magbi-briefing yan. Ngayon, if the president decides to make his own statement, that's pupunta sila, then they will face the media, and yun ang pag-uusapan yung kung ano man yun, magpapaliwanag, o mag-inform, o mag-brief, or whatever. So, balikan natin yung sistema yun. I don't know kung bakit sinasabi that yung mahirap ako yung ambush interview. I'm always out in public. Pero siyempre, we're doing something else also. But I don't know why they say that, because as I said, hindi naman ako pwedeng magtago. I'm always out in the public. So anyway,
we can expect regular press conferences from you instead of a presidential spokesman, ano po?
I think it's necessary. Wag na yung spokesman, press secretary na lang. There's a difference. There's a difference. This is another idea. I mean, hindi pa to buo. Pero yun ang iniisip ko. Kasi iniisip ko pati yung sa mga nakaraan na presidente, wala namang spokesman eh.
Frontrunner kayo ngayon sa mga surveys. Sa puntong ito, meron po ba kayong pinangangambahan? What's your worst fear in these elections? And if ever you win also as president, ano po talaga yung pinangangambahan nyo kung sakali?
Well, yung mga nababalitaan nating manggugulo sa eleksyon, at saka yung dayaan at every level. Alam naman ninyo, nabiktima na ako dyan noong 2016. Kaya siyempre, kailangan maging maingat dyan kasi nakita ko na kung ano yung maaring mangyari.
And how confident are you at this point that you're the president who can unify and move the country forward?
Well, I'm not confident that I'm going to be the president yet, because I do not allow myself to be confident. It doesn't matter to me what numbers you show me. We're not there yet. So we don't stop, we keep going. Put it this way, should I be elected, should I be lucky enough to be elected, then how confident will I be? I'm confident that I will work with every iota of my being to make sure that we are working towards unity, to unify the country.
Presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos, thank you very much for sitting down with us in private.
Thank you.
I'm Ruth Cabal, and you're watching CNN Philippines.